Hello, I'd like to welcome you to our digital classroom. I'm Jerry Winslet, along with Jason Leonard, who's at the desk over there. We're going to talk to him in a moment. And this is the monthly live show. But before we get started, I want you to ask you to do something for me. If you could put your name and how many people are watching with you. You can use the chat feature, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have any questions during the show, you can type those questions in as well using the chat feature. Now, you don't have to wait till the end of the show to ask the questions. We'll have a question and answer segment before we sign off. If you can't just put your name and how many people are watching with you, just use that chat feature, ask those questions, and we'll get to them. If there's a lot of questions at the end of the show, we'll get to as many as we can, but we'll get you an answer, either email you or get back to you as soon as we can. But let's go ahead and get started. So today's show is on NAECA III and how that affects the gas water heaters. Residential gas water heaters. Now, a lot of talk about NAECA III. What is NAECA III? NAECA III is the third installment of a plan that dates back to 1987 to increase the energy efficiency of major home appliances like TVs, air conditioners, and water heaters. The NAECA energy standards have saved consumers billions in lower household energy costs. Now, NAECA III is expected to save consumers an additional $63 billion in smaller electric and gas bills. Now, these are significant savings in operating costs. The biggest impact for us, for water heaters, is simply that the water heaters will get a couple inches larger. And that means that the size of the space will determine what size water heater is going to fit. The vast majority of cases, a NAECA III water heater will fit in the same space as the old water heater. And this is particularly true for gas water heaters, which have much more space available. But really, Jason, I'm going to come back over here. Really, if I'm a consumer or I'm a customer, now it's just saying that the water heater is getting bigger. What does that mean for me? Is that a problem? What's going on with that?
Yeah, as you pointed out, there's a lot of talk about NAECA and what exactly does that mean. In most cases, it's really not that big of a deal. The majority of the impact for NAECA III really takes place on the manufacturing side of things, retooling, product design, all these types of things. For an end user and from an installation standpoint, it's really not that big of a deal. Yes, in most cases, water heaters are going to get a little bit bigger, meaning that we're going to go from like an 18-inch diameter up to a 20-inch diameter in most cases. It's going to get about 2 inches larger. Most of the time, that is not a problem. Gas water heaters are typically not installed in a manner that does not allow for at least an additional inch on either side. They're just usually not installed that tight. It's really not that big of a deal. In areas where space is concerned, we have a blanket option. We have a unit that comes with a blanket that maintains that exact same form factor. So most of the time, this is not really a big deal as far as the field is concerned. Most of it was done on the manufacturing side.
So we're going to have options. I mean, if we are in limited space,
that's the big thing to
options.
Remember. Regardless of the application, regardless of the unit you're looking at, we have an option to fit that application, regardless of what yours is.
Now, we're talking about energy efficiencies are going to get higher. Now, what is that in terms of your Eef rating? I mean, I'm assuming that changed. That's one of the things that changed.
Yeah, the Eef, the energy factor, was the big change with NAECA III. What that means is that water heaters has to get more energy efficient. Now, the Eef that gets applied to a water heater, that number really doesn't mean a lot on its own. Okay, that number takes into consideration everything that involves energy efficiency on the water heater: standby heat loss, input, R factor, all these different types of calculations go into that energy factor. And as I pointed out, on its own, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But what it does is provides a benchmark that now we can compare one unit against another unit in terms of overall efficiency. Now, Eefs are going up. If we take a look at the graphic here, we can kind of see what Eefs were in the past. The first one we're looking at here is a 30-gallon capacity. The old standard was a .61. The new NAECA standard is a .63. And you can kind of see how these Eef numbers are changing. The important thing you want to look at here is pay attention to everything above 55 gallon. Once
Right.
we hit 60 gallon, notice that the EF now goes from a 0.56 up to a 0.75. Okay, now that's significant because that means that we're really going to have to change the design of the water heater at that point. We're going to have to go into a condensing
Right.
water heater, your ultra high efficiency for anything above 60 gallon. Now, another thing you want to keep in mind, commercial units are not in scope. In terms of NAECA III, commercial units are not in scope. BTU input is important, okay, because anything above 75,000 BTU on input is considered commercial water heaters based on the scope of NAECA III. So we point out those anything above 60 gallon would have to go to a condensing. That is true if it is under 75,000 BTU. Those 75-gallon water heaters that you're accustomed to that have a BTU input above 75,000, your 75,100s, there's no change to those. Those are outside of the scope of NAECA, so you're not going to see any change whatsoever. It's the below 75,000 input, you're considered residential units that are above 60 gallons are going to have to go condensing. You just can't reach the types of EFs that we're looking for, that .72, .74, and .75 with a standard atmospheric application has to go condensing.
So, okay, we have to have the raise the EF rating, so that's the overall efficiencies of, you know, it's taking into account a lot of different things. You know, one of the things is, you know, thermal efficiency. We can't really go any more with that because once we hit 82, 83%, we start condensing, so we had to do something else. How did we get to those higher EF ratings?
Yeah, as you point out, our whole goal here is to increase the energy overall efficiency of the water heater. Now, in terms of thermal efficiency, we have really kind of met the max that we can achieve on a standard atmospherically vented water heater. The theoretical limit is 83. At that number, you kind of start to make rain. We start to condense that combustion product, so it has to maintain below that. And we've really kind of maxed out what we can achieve through thermal efficiency. That leaves standby heat loss.
Exactly.
If we can maintain the heat that we're generating inside that heater for a longer period of times, thus migrating it into the water, then we can achieve higher levels of EFs just by controlling that standby heat loss. And that's the direction that we took. That means that we're going to have more insulation. The foam cavity on the water heater. We talked about the water heaters getting bigger. The actual tank doesn't get bigger. It's the foam cavity. The foam cavity between the inner tank and the outer jacket got 1 inch larger all the way around, which is going to mean that most NAECA III water heaters are going to be 2 inches larger than the old water heater. Now, another way that we can achieve that, if not in the foam cavity, we can also put that additional insulation on the outside of the jacket, and we do that with a blanket. Now we can take a blanket and make up that same EF, but with a blanket as opposed to an additional foam cavity.
We've got a shot of a blanket instructions there. There's what the blanket looks like coming to you with your instructions. Now, as far as the blanket, we are going to have videos and PDFs on knowledge articles on how to install and use the blanket, so you need to stay tuned for that. Look for those. The videos, step-by-step instructions on how to use the blanket and how to put it on. Now, we've got
keep a close eye on the universities because those videos will be coming out shortly. And again, they're going to be a step-by-step walkthrough on how to install these blankets. You saw there in the image, it also comes with a set of instructions. When you open up the blanket, there'll be a set of instructions to follow. And plus, the university will have those videos for you as well in case you want to watch those.
And here's an example of the blanket. This is the top piece.
Yeah, there's two pieces to the blanket. One is the piece that wraps around the unit itself, and then the other, your top cover. This is the actual blanket. As you can tell, this is a pretty beefy blanket. You got about 3 inches of insulation here. Another cool factor, you'll notice that we've got this vinyl coating on both sides. Both sides of that is covered with this coating. It just makes it a lot more durable. In the past, a lot of aftermarket blankets have been offered, but in my opinion, they were kind of cheesy. You know, there was all types of them on the aftermarket, but they were pretty thin and could rip and tear pretty easily, those type of things. I'm pretty impressed with the blanket that engineering put together here. As you can tell, like I said, this is a pretty substantial blanket. And we got another one here. This
Yeah,
is
we've
what.
got this is what it comes in the box, right?
Yeah, this is what's going to come inside the box. This will be in the corner of the carton. As you can tell, this is wrapped pretty tight for space reasons.
Right.
It's a pretty hefty blanket, so it's wrapped really, really tight so we can get it inside the same carton. And you're just going to cut the cellophane off the jacket. Just be really careful. You only want to cut the cellophane. You don't want to cut the blanket. If you're going to use a box cutter or something like that, just make sure you're not cutting the blanket.
Don't cut
and again,
too deep.
Yeah, don't cut too deep. Again, those videos that we're going to put out that will show you exactly how to do that kind of stuff as well. So pay attention to your university, and we'll have those videos up there for you.
So we'll be offering certain models with a blanket, right? That means that they're not going to get that much bigger, or are they?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Some units are going to get bigger, like I said, about 2 inches bigger, and some units are going to come with a blanket. The blanket actually allows you to maintain the same form factor as the old heater, but still maintain those higher EFs. You're just doing it with a blanket instead of the foam cavity. Pretty much the entire product line, you're going to see those two options, either the larger NAECA unit or the blanket NAECA unit, depending on your application, which one of those is going to be applicable. Let's take another look at the graphic here and we kind of see what I'm talking about. On our tall models, our standard tall gas input models, we noticed that a 30 gallon, let's look at the top one here. Previously, this was a 1-inch foam cavity. The height was 61.5 inches with a 16-inch diameter. Now, the exact same unit at a NAECA III has a 2-inch foam cavity, 61 3/4 on height, so we gained a 1/4 inch in height there, 18 inches in diameter. So that's what we were talking about before, that the water heater is going to be an additional 2 inches larger. But if you notice directly below that, there's our blanket model. Still 1-inch foam cavity, 61 3/4 on height, so we're not gaining anything on height.
Right.
The big deal is 16-inch diameter. Notice that we're maintaining the form factor from the old unit. We're just gaining the additional EFs by the use of that blanket. Again, I can't stress the importance of that. That is a really cool feature to have both of those options. Because if space is not a concern, most of the time it's not. You just go with the standard NAECA unit, no big deal. If space is a concern, particularly multi-residence, apartment complexes, condos, those type of things, where square footage and space is really at a premium. Sometimes you run into a scenario where the physical door of the closet is only so big and it's hard to get the heater in. If that 2 inches is going to cause a problem, then it's no big deal. You go with the one that has the blanket. You can still get it in the exact same spot. Once your install is complete, then you go ahead and put your blanket on.
Yeah, because you're not going to be limited in space all the way around the heater.
That's right, and the blanket is compressible. Typically, if you have an obstruction, say it's up next to the wall, well, that's only one part of the heater.
Yeah.
You can compress the blanket in that particular location and still maintain the EF all the way around the rest of the water heater because that part won't be compressed. Or if it's close to another device or something like that, the blanket is compressible, so that's no big deal. So go ahead and do your install and then put your blanket on, and you can maintain that NAECA III EF without having a physically larger unit.
Right, and we were talking about the tall models. Let's talk about the short models, see if we have any changes on that.
Yeah, let's look at the graphic here. One thing you'll notice, again, we offer the standard NAECA III unit and the NAECA III blanket unit. The big thing you want to pay close attention to here is we're talking about short models.
Right.
Anyone that is ordering or installing a short gas model, obviously they have limited headspace, right? Notice the heights in inches from the old to the new. They haven't changed. That's really, really important. Actually, on the 50 gallon, actually went down a 1/4 inch. That's really, really important because if they're ordering that short gas unit again, they have limited headspace. So we don't want to make that unit any taller than we absolutely have to. And as you can tell, we really haven't changed the dimensions height-wise. We're still running the same diameters. We're going to be 2 inches larger on our NAECA units. Same form factor on the blanket units. We're just adding the blanket.
Okay. All right, and now we talk about short and tall. Now we need to touch on high input because we had a couple of water heaters, that we actually discontinued.
Yeah, high input's a little bit different because again, you're talking about the same size heater.
Right.
We're just adding more BTU into it. This is typically your high recovery units. So your input is going to be a lot higher. If we look at the graphic here, we can see that there's a couple of units that are no longer offered. The one is going to be our 50-gallon, 50,000 BTU input.
Right.
That unit is going to be no longer made. If we can go full screen on the image here, we can see that's our first one. The 40-gallon, 50,000 BTU input, that unit is going to no longer be made. And that 65-gallon, we talked about that earlier. That the EF on that heater is now going up to .75. So you really can't get there in atmospheric, so that unit is discontinued as well. Another thing to point out, you notice that a 55-gallon, we have a brand new 55.
Yeah, that's new, isn't it?
That's added to the roster with NAECA III. You got your dimensions there. It's a 2-inch foam cavity, 60 on height, 24 in diameter. That unit is still in design, should be available later this year, so keep an eye out for that. The other two heaters you see there at the bottom, the 74 and the 98, that's your 75-gallon and your 100-gallon units. There's no change to those. Those units are the exact same thing that they were in the offering before NAECA III, and that's really because of the input. The input on those were above 75,000 BTU, the 75,100.
Right.
Again, takes it out of scope of NAECA, so you're not going to see any change there.
Okay. And you know, the last thing we want to talk about is the ultra low NOx. Do we have any changes in ultra low NOx, or we actually added one? I think
yeah,
you're
very minimal. Again, let's go back to the graphic and we can see what's going on there. One thing I want you to pay close attention to: current diameter and NAECA III diameter. Notice there is no change whatsoever in our diameters. The only change you're going to see in the ultra low NOx product lineup is that now we have a new 40-gallon short.
That's good.
That is now added to the roster. So that's really the only change you're going to see as far as ultra low NOx. Is no change in form factor and one extra unit that we didn't offer before.
Okay, so now we've got, you know, this is what's the changes that we're looking at. Now, you know, as a customer, as a contractor, I'm going to have to, we need to go over our options, what we actually have. If I'm, you know, I'm a customer, my water heater just went out, it's 40-gallon tank. You know, I'm going to have to get a NAECA III water heater. You know, what can I be looking at, and what do I need to do, or what is the contractor, what's his options if he's replacing my water heater?
Absolutely. Well, as we stated earlier, no matter, regardless of your particular environment, your particular application, there is an option available for you. And we just want to kind of outline some of those because you can kind of see how this plays out in the real world. If we can go back over here, let's take a look at a standard 40-gallon water heater that would be out there today. This would be the water heater that you're replacing. This is a standard 40-gallon, 1-inch foam cavity, 62 on the height, and an 18-inch diameter. Now, if you're going to replace that unit, the direct replacement, your direct NAECA III replacement, again, 2 inches larger in diameter. Okay, the height did not change, but we went to a 2-inch foam cavity, which made a 20-inch diameter instead of an 18-inch diameter. Now, most of the time, that's the only thing you're going to need. You're just going to put in the direct replacement for the NAECA III. If space is not an option, most of the time it's not going to be, then you're done. You just put in that heater and you're finished. Now, for those areas where space isn't concerned, again, multifamily residents, condos, apartment complexes, those type of things, we have another option as well. We talked about this as our blanket. This allows us to maintain the same form factor as before. Notice that our diameter is still 18 inches, the same thing we started out with.
Right.
But now we have the 1-inch foam cavity and an external blanket. That allows us to hit that same EF, but without a physically larger tank.
Yeah, I mean, the height's the same. It's just pretty much the same water heater.
Pretty much from a form factor standpoint, it's the same water heater as you had in there before. Just now you're going to add the blanket. So you shouldn't see any problem with installation there.
And that most of the time, these are the best option. I mean, this is the option that's going to fit your installation.
Yeah, 90% of the time, this is the only thing you're ever going to have to worry about. Do I need the standard NAECA III or do I need the blanket NAECA III? That's really the only decision-making process you're going to have to worry about on installation. Now, there are some other options that are worth looking at as well. Again, you have a customer who is in a replacement situation right now. This may be a good time to look at other technology.
Right.
It may be look at some different installation practices. You're out there anyway, you got the business anyway, and they're already replacing the unit.
Right.
It's worthwhile to look at some of the options that you have to you as well. So let's take a look at a couple of those. Again, we're going to start out with that 40-gallon gas, 1-inch foam cavity, 62-inch tall, 18-inch diameter, standard 40-gallon that you would be replacing. Your first option, again, is just that standard NAECA III unit. Nothing changed except for the diameter went up to 2 inches larger. If that is not going to fit your application, we talked about the going with the blanket. Maybe they don't want the blanket, or maybe they are open to looking at different technology.
Right.
So the next option we can offer them is, what about tankless?
Yeah.
Now would be a good time to look at tankless, particularly because of the new 140 that's now in the product roster. That 140 has the capability of running on a 1/2-inch gas line. So all of a sudden, tankless becomes a much more viable option in terms of a direct replacement. All we have to look at some different venting options and those type of things. But now may be the time to look at tankless. If you have a consumer who is kind of leaning in that direction or asking questions about tankless, now would be a good time to look into that.
Tankless is popular now, and 120,000 BTU. You can use a 1/2-inch gas line. It's got a 0.95 Eef rating, so that already meets you know, the NAECA standards. So I mean, it's great.
That's the great thing about our tankless lineup is everything in our tankless lineup already meets the NAECA III requirements from an energy standpoint. So you're not going to see any change across the board in tankless.
Yeah, and I mean, there are customers out there because tankless is popular, and you know, they see them at different stores and see them on TV, so they're thinking about the tankless, and if it works for them. I mean, and with tankless, it's all about how they use hot water. So if it works for them, then yeah, that could be a great option.
Now would be a good time to look into it. Now, another option you have, our last one on our graphic here, notice that we dropped to a 30. We originally had a 40-gallon. You can go down to a 30-gallon as spacious as an option. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, what are you talking about? You're asking me to take a 40 out and put a 30 in. My customer's going to kill me. Well, here's the deal. You're not just going to put in a 30-gallon water heater. You're going to put in a 30, but with the mixing valve.
Right.
Put the mixing valve on that 30-gallon water heater. Basically, what this allows you to do is now you can turn the tank temperature of that heater as high as you want to. You can max out the thermostat, go to 160. If you do that, you're effectively creating a water heater that is now one size larger than you had before. If you had a 30-gallon water heater in place, put a mixing valve, turn it up to 160, you basically have a 40-gallon water heater.
Yeah, set to 120. Yes, you do.
Yeah, it'll effectively create the next size up by turning up the temperature and putting in a mixing valve.
And that works with all the water heaters. It could be 40, it could be 50-gallon, it could be, and you put a mixing valve on it, and it's going to change you're going to get more hot water because the water is going to be hotter.
Yeah.
The water is hotter, and there's a shot of a whole house mixing valve right there. But the water will be hotter, so you're going to add more cold water, and mixing valves do make sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. What we're doing is we're basically pre-mixing. Coming out of the water heater, we're going to pre-mix that water before we send it out to the devices. This allows us to take the tank temperature up to 160 degrees. That mixing valve is going to temper that down with some cold water to hit that magic number of 120 that we want at our point of use. Again, anytime you turn the tank temperature up above 120 degrees, you need a mixing valve to reduce the risk of scalding.
Right. Yeah, and this is a good opportunity to, you know, you can put a mixing valve on any water heater.
Yeah, and really you should be
because you can control the temperature away from the water heter.
Absolutely.
That's where I was going.
Absolutely, and it's also code.
Yeah, exactly.
ASSE 1070 actually says that the water heater can no longer be the primary control of temperature for the home. What does that mean? Well, that means mixing valve. Whether that be whole house or point of use, you're really going to need a mixing valve in order to achieve that. But as you pointed out, that allows us to be much more accurate in the temperatures that we're sending out to those devices. As you well know, the temperature inside the tank is going to vary. We're heating that from the bottom, so you're going to get varying basically layers of temperature within inside that tank. It may be 120, it may be 125.
Yeah, because we're sensing temperature at the bottom as well, too. I mean,
Correct.
our gas valve is at the bottom of the tank. That's where we're sensing it. That's where it'll shut down at 120. Now, that doesn't mean it's 120 degrees at the top of the
Correct.
tank. With this, you can turn it up, put the mixing valve on. You can turn the mixing valve to 120. You are essentially, tempering that water away or adjusting the temperature of the water, controlling the temperature away from the water heater. A whole house mixing valve is great. But we actually recommend a point of use mixing valve.
Yeah, and we can kind of see that here. We've got two different styles. We have a whole home mixing valve right here. We can kind of see that one. And then we got a point of use that you can put in as well. Point of use is really the way to go. Okay, mixing valves are extremely important. Like I said, we talked about some of the benefits. There's multiple benefits that you can get by putting a mixing valve on the water heater. And again, it is actually code. Most local municipalities aren't enforcing that code, but that's beginning to change. Right. Especially with the onset of NAECA III, you're going to see that code be enforced more and more frequently by local municipalities. But there's so many benefits you can get out of these. But the point of use is really the way you want to go. Right. Because now I can determine what the temperature that is feeding this point of use individually, as opposed to the entire home. Well, why is that important? Well, you never want to send water that is more than 120 degrees to any device that's going to come in contact with the end user, right? Right. Because of scald risk. But there are some outlets where we actually want to see temperatures above 120. Dishwasher, for instance. For sanitary purposes, you want to send water that's above 140 to a dishwasher. Point of use mixing valves allows you to do that. Now you can determine what outlet temperature you want at each one of those points of use, so you can both maximize your hot water delivery from the heater and reduce risk of scalding at every point of use and maintain those sanitary temperatures as well. Best option, point of use. Yeah, point of use is what we recommend, and that's what, if you call in, we've got call centers here. If you ask them for their recommendation, they're going to tell you point of use, because you can control the water temperature at each faucet or hot water faucet. There's a couple other water heaters I want to touch on real quick. Mobile home units. Do we see any changes on mobile home units with NAECA 3? It's a good question. Mobile homes, you're not going to see any change at all. Form factors are staying the same. So your old diameters for a mobile home are going to be the exact same thing in the new NAECAs. You're really not going to see any change with mobile home products at all. Okay, and not from an installation standpoint. There's some design things, but for form factor and installation and all that, no change whatsoever. And on our standard atmospheric direct vent water heater, the two-pipe system, the no fan model. Correct. Did we see any changes with the direct vent? Not a lot, except for the fact your 75-gallon direct vent. And again, we're talking about atmospherically vented direct vent, not your power vent. Just your standard atmospherically direct vent. The 75-gallon unit will no longer be offered. But again, some of the things we talked about earlier, it's just impossible to achieve that kind of EF on a heater that large. The standby heat loss is too great. So the direct vent 75-gallon, you're not going to see that in the product line. Your 30, 40, and 50, you're not going to see any change at all. Yeah, because our standard power vent water heaters, our fan assistant, and our power direct vent water heaters, now they're 0.70 anyway. They already meet the standard, so there's no change in those. That's a great point. Your standard power vents and your power directs, the new Honeywell heaters, are .70. That is the highest in the industry, and they already meet the NAECA 3 requirement, so you're not going to see any change at all on your power vent units. Okay, now one thing I want to talk about before we move on is Energy Star. Is this something, is there any changes with Energy Star, or people have questions about that? Are we still meeting the Energy Star? Yeah, that's a good question. Energy Star is always in the forefront of most consumers' minds. That's a big buzzword. It's a big hot point these days. Those two are completely separate. NAECA 3 and Energy Star are two completely different things, but typically you're going to see some changes kind of across the board. When one changes, the other changes. We can see here that the standard gas storage, this is your standard atmospheric below 55 gallons, is maintaining a .67. There's no change whatsoever.
Right.
So what met Energy Star previous to NAECA 3 still going to meet NAECA Star in terms of below 55 gallons. The big thing here is above 55 gallons. Notice the Energy Stars now went to a .80. We touched on this a little bit earlier, that the new NAECA 3 was going up to a .75, 72, 74, and 75. In order to achieve that, you've got to get condensing units. So all of our condensing units, ultra high efficiency units, are going to meet that .80 and get you that Energy Star requirement. The last one we see there is our gas instantaneous. That's our tankless units. That has went up to a .90. Fortunately, everything in our product line in terms of tankless already meets that and did previous to NAECA.
All right, so that's the Energy Star. Now I know since we're making these product improvements on on the water heaters due to NAECA 3, since we were doing that, we made some other improvements as well. Kind of want to go over those with you. Now, there's a few different features that are really exciting. Let's talk about what kind of improvements did we do on these water heaters, since we were already doing them anyway. I mean, we were already having a change, so
yeah, that was the deal. These changes aren't NAECA 3 related, but since we were already doing some product adjustments anyway to the design, we might as well roll these out with NAECA.
Right.
If you're going to change them, might as well change them once. The first one we want to talk to you about is your manifold pressures. You're going to notice that manifold pressures across the board are going from the historic 5 inches manifold down to a 4. Now, this is really important for large municipalities, particularly if they have an older infrastructure. New York, New Jersey, upper Northeast, you run into this a lot. And it's scattered out all along the country, especially in heavily metropolitan areas, where 5 may be a little bit difficult to get. It may be tough to get 5 inches manifold pressure. That's dropping to a 4. Across the board, with the exception of California. If you have an ultra low NOx unit in California, that is still going to maintain the 5-inch water column. Okay,
and that's with the gas, the minimum gas pressure. Now, on I know they made some changes on the dip tube there, and we've used these in the past, though. I mean, we've used these on other water heaters, the combination dip tube and nipple.
Yeah, actually, the Honeywell power vents that we were talking about earlier, those utilize the combo dip tube ever since they came into the roster. Previously, we used a one-piece dip tube that slid down into the spud, and then the nipple screwed in over the top of that and held the dip tube down. Now we're just going to a combo design, meaning the dip tube and the nipple is all one piece. The heat traps are internal inside the nipple, so it's just one part. Also, across the board, they will all be the self-cleaning type dip tube across the board as well.
That swirls the water up in the tank, so the
sediment
doesn't
keeps
gather
that
at the
sediment. Self-clean doesn't mean you never have to drain one.
Exactly.
All it does, it just keeps that sedimentation kind of moving around, keeps it from calcifying.
Right.
That when you do drain and flush the heater, it's more productive.
And it only does that whenever you're running hot water, because for every ounce of hot water, an ounce of cold goes in. So the more hot water you're running out, the more cold water is coming in. So that's what gives it that swirling effect and kind of keeps that sediment moving. The last one, though, is probably my favorite. This is going to save us a lot of time in the field when we're having to replace water heaters and drain water heaters. One of the big things that you can run in from time to time is there's a lot of sediment in the bottom because no one, they weren't flushing or draining their water heater. There's a lot of sediment down there, and there's no way for you to really, get a screwdriver in there to not break that sediment loose through the drain valve. This is a great feature.
This one, the ported ball type drain valves is a big deal. We've asked for this for many years now. This is a great design. We went with a standard ball valve, also a straight path through design. So if you have a heater, especially one of those old heaters that you're pulling out, there's a ton of sediment in the bottom of the water heater. You know how difficult it is. Some of these just will not drain. The straight path through design now allows you to open that drain, and you can push a small screwdriver through there and kind of break up some of that sediment and let it drain. The other thing with that straight through ball valve design, you also get 30% higher flow through that valve. So draining is going to be a lot faster anyway.
Yeah, that's going to help out a lot.
Yeah, we're really excited about that.
All right. So, well, there's one more thing we want to talk about before we kind of move on. It's a new feature that we actually have that is going to be available for customers, and it's on the website. But it's something, sometimes, especially now, when you start really looking at if your water heater's changing different sizes, I mean, it's probably a good idea to look at that application and find out if they really need that much hot water, or do they need less hot water or more hot water. It's a good idea to kind of take a step back and look at that, because sometimes a family who had 4 kids or 3 kids, and they've had 3 kids, and they're all went away to college.
Yeah.
Now they're down to 2 people in the house, and they may not need that 50-gallon tank.
Yeah, now's the time to look at that.
Right.
You're in a replacement scenario anyway, so now is a good time to look at the demand on that heater. And is a direct replacement the best option?
Right.
As you pointed out, sometimes they don't need that much hot water. Sometimes they need more hot water.
Well, that's the easiest option. I mean, really, that's the easiest option, is just to do what you had in there before.
Correct.
But it's a good time to sit there and look at it and make sure that's exactly what they need, especially if they're in a situation where the water heater doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
Where they don't have a lot of room. I mean, do they really need that 50-gallon tank? But we've got on our website, we actually have an app that will actually show you
the
how
new
to,
sizing feature.
or it's on the website, a sizing feature. Yeah.
For years, we've had different sizing applications for commercial. If you could tell us, what type of dish machine you have, what other type of appliances you have in the restaurant, how many people you're serving throughout the day, all these different things, we could be very precise in what the actual demand was going to be on that unit. We've never really had that in residential. And until now, this is something that we're really excited about. This new product selector really allows for that.
Right.
Now, basically, it's just going to ask you a few questions, how many showers you're running, how many back-to-back showers you're running, all this type of stuff. And it's going to spit out some options that meet the demand that you're looking for. And one of the cool features about this, Jerry's going to kind of demo it. One of the things it's going to ask you is, what is your zip code? You think, well, why is that important? Why does it need to know my zip code?
Yeah.
Groundwater temperatures. That is something that it really needs to play into and be a factor when we're looking at what water heater and what the demand is going to be. Because a 40-gallon water heater in Florida with 75-degree or 80-degree inlet water temperatures may be fine, but we take that exact same heater to Minnesota.
Where it's slush.
And you're just above frozen. That same heater may not meet the demand because the coldness of the groundwater temperatures. So that's very important. Jerry, take us through this thing and kind of show us how this thing works.
Okay, so to get to this point here, you're going to go to hotwater.com, and you can go to the home page. This is what you'll pull up first. But you can go over here to the resources. It's the product selector tool. You click on that, and it's going to take you here. Now, this is the front page for this. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how much hot water we really need, what type of water heater. So the first page it's going to ask us, what's the length of the longest shower someone takes in your house?
And most of these questions people know.
Oh yeah,
it's not kind of the inside baseball, and we're throwing a lot of technical jargon at them or something like this. Most of these questions people are very familiar. How long of a shower do you take? They can guesstimate how long that is.
Yeah, look, epic. That's
epic.
That's
epic.
great.
An epic
so if they
shower.
take a short shower, we'll just say, well, about an average shower, 7 to 9 minutes. We'll pick that. How many showers would you? Your household, how many showers do you take back to back? So in the morning we might take 2 showers back to back. How many showers would your household like to take at the same time? Well, we'd probably like to take 2 at the same time. And what is your largest bathtub? We're just going to say we have a standard bathtub. And do any of your showers have body spray system or other high flow rate shower heads? In our case, we could put yes, but let's go ahead and just say no. It's just standard. And there's also an advanced button on each one of these screens that kind of get into more detail. We can show you that. And on this is really cool. This is going to tell you, how hot do you keep the tank, your water heater? If you keep it at 35, what's the average groundwater temperature? If you move these slider bars, it's going to actually change.
Yeah, this is a great
change
feature
the
because we talked earlier about in adding a mixing valve and how you can actually get one size larger.
Right.
This actually proves that. A lot of times we say that and we go, yeah, does that actually happen in real life? It actually does. As you start to move these slider bars, you can change that storage temperature up to 160 and start to see what it does to the demand on the heater. It's a really, really cool feature.
Right, and this is the U.S. national average on this advanced screen. If we want to find our average, we go ahead and put this in here. We're going to go ahead and put Tennessee and Ashland City, where we're located. That's our average groundwater temperature is 57, and this is telling us our cost of electricity in our area, cost of natural gas in our area, the propane. This is all going to play a part in choosing which water heater we're looking for. So we went ahead and did that. Now we go back to this screen. We can go ahead and click our normal, what we had before, standard. We can put customized here. No, we don't have. We go to the next page. Now, we're looking for how do we heat our water? Well, we're talking about natural gas today. And then it's going to ask you, what kind of water heater do you have in there now? Or what do you want? You can choose either one of these. We're just going to go ahead and put standard vent. How much space do you have? You can give the exact dimensions, or if you don't know, which is a lot of customers might not know this.
Correct.
So we're just going to go ahead and put I don't know. And then it's going to say plenty of space. My space is short, my space is narrow. It's a good idea to take a look, and we're going to go ahead and put plenty of space. And we're going to go to the next, and we went ahead and put our zip code in, so it can tell you. All right, and here are my options.
So it basically just spit out
right.
a series of options that, based on the parameters that we gave it, will meet the demand that we're looking for. So not only do we have one heater, now we have a few heaters in the product line that are going to meet what we need.
And we can adjust our shower if we need to in minutes, and it'll spit it out. So we can do everything we did before over here on this right-hand side. So that's a great feature.
And those top two tabs on top, we can do some changing as well. If we decide that we need more hot water or we need lower energy costs, you can click on one of them and it'll start adjusting that product as well. If you need something that is even more energy efficient, or you need something that has an even higher demand, if periodically we need more hot water than normal, you can click on those tabs too and it'll change that product.
But it's just a great way for a customer or the contractor to go to this website, go ahead and try mess around with it. You'll get used to it. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy. You can look at different locations all over the country, see what the average cost of electricity is or gas is in every single area. It just gives you the overall average. But it's a good idea to go ahead and get familiar with that. And send your customers to that so they can take a look at it as well.
That's an excellent tool. Please take advantage of that. Again, when it comes to sizing and those type of things, it's not like it used to be. We used to think, well, how many people live there and how many bathrooms?
How many bathrooms? How many bathrooms?
That was the case when we knew exactly what the flow is in most bathrooms, as you pointed out, with body sprayers and big garden tubs.
Basically, some people have car washes in their
it looks like a car wash.
So
sizing becomes much, much more important. And especially, again, with NAECA III and those higher energy concerns.
Yeah. So that's about all from us right now. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of your questions and get to as many questions as we can get to. Well, if you have questions, you can go ahead and use the chat feature and ask us now. We'll get to them if we already sign off by the time you ask the question, then we'll go ahead and get back with you as quick as we can. Just leave your email address and we'll email you the answer. But I guess that about covers it, Jason. So
I believe so.
But if you have folks who missed this broadcast, a recorded version will be available and posted online, usually within about 24 hours. There's a link in the email announcement. And before we go, I'd like to mention Contractor Rewards. You can earn Contractor Rewards points for buying A.O. Smith products. Purchase an eligible product that has a yellow rewards code sticker, enter that code online, and shop for thousands of name brand items. Simply go to contractorrewards.com and enroll. It's free and easy. If you're not yet a member, sign up today. If you already are a member of Contractor Rewards, you get points just for watching this class. Here's that Contractor Rewards code. All right, well, that's our show for today. If you have any questions about anything we've covered here, just email us at university@hotwater.com. Next month, our class will be on NAECA III electric products. So your A.O. Smith sales rep will send you an email reminder next month. And don't forget to go check out our new A.O. Smith University website. It's university.hotwater.com. If you're in the need for some training, go to that website, check out all of the trainings that we have available. We've got, live video training. There's hands-on here at the factory. You can even register for classes on that website. But you need to check it out. Tell us what you think. It's a really cool. Got a lot of videos and previous shows that we've done. Go check it out and see what you think.
Absolutely.
But for Jason Leonard, I'm Jerry Winslet, and we'll see you next time.